Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen and today I am here with another reading wrap up. Now it's only been a couple weeks since I've done one of these videos, but I did promise myself that I wanted to do these videos more often. Instead of waiting for me to finish a whole bunch of books, just kind of check in every couple weeks or so and talk about the books I finished while they're still pretty fresh in my mind. So there are 3 books that I wanted to talk about today, so let's just go ahead and jump right into them. So the first book that I want to talk about is one that I picked up on a whim. I have wanted to read this book for a very long time. I've had it on my TBR for a while, and I really had no intention of reading it anytime soon. But what prompted me to pick this book up was I saw a movie trailer for its adaptation that's going to be released early next year. And that book is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Now, this book is science fiction. You can obviously see that by the cover, but science fiction is a genre I don't typically pick up very often. Now, I'm not opposed to science fiction, and in fact, when I do invest my time in science fiction books, I often find that I am greatly rewarded with them, and I don't know why I don't pick them up more. I think that science fiction can be very broad, and it can differ greatly from book to book on what type of science fiction you're dealing with. But for the most part, anytime I do find myself reading science fiction, I end up enjoying it. So this book, having enjoyed it, it's kind of making me want to make it a goal or a reading goal for me to add more sci-fi books into my rotation. So I'll need some help maybe thinking of some other good science fiction books to read. But back to this one. So this book is very popular. I feel like I'm one of the last people on earth to read it, and I really did enjoy every moment of it. It was a story that was very engaging, and it got my attention right from the start. And what I loved about this book, most importantly, is that I think for me, the idea of reading science fiction is a little scary, and I worry about whether or not I'll have the brain power to process it. But this book specifically, I felt was totally accessible for any type of reader that might be afraid of reading sci-fi. This book did such a great job of explaining things along the way. Now, that could also be a deterrent for some readers, especially if you're really into sci-fi and you read a lot of it. This type of book maybe could feel a little condescending to a really, true sci-fi reader, because it does take the time to explain everything. So I feel like this book in particular was really written for a more mainstream audience, and true science fiction readers might struggle a little bit with it or think that the author is maybe dumbing things down a little bit. But for me, as a reader that doesn't dive into that genre very often, it was very good for me to be able to learn and understand those things better along the way so that I could follow the story throughout. So the book opens with our main character. His name is Ryland Grace. He is a school teacher. He teaches science, and he wakes up at the beginning of this book in this unknown location. He has no idea who he is. He has no idea where he is or why he is there. And as the story starts to unfold and he gets these memories back, we're learning along with him as the reader. So we don't know anything about his situation prior to him learning those things. Now, what he quickly comes to learn is that he is on a spaceship, and there has been an incident on Earth where, well, actually not on Earth, it's technically on the sun, but there is an organism that's called astrophage that is slowly depleting the sun of all of its energy. And that in turn is obviously going to have dire effects to Earth. And they needed to come up with a plan to save Earth from slipping into another ice age. So him having a background in science has led him on to this journey. And I won't tell too many things about the details of the story or where it goes, but what we do have is this person in space trying to save our planet, and he is coming into contact with other things that we have never encountered in the world before. And I don't know how much people know of the story. I'll be honest, I didn't even read the back cover of the book because I knew I wanted to read it, so I don't know how much of the story is divulged, so I will leave it at that. But it was a really great story. It was a book that was propulsive and kept my interest from start to finish. This was also a book that I did primarily with audio. I have a physical copy, but I also go back and forth between the physical and audio, and I had a work trip where I was driving, so I wanted something that was really entertaining, and the narrator did a fantastic job. The whole production of the audiobook was really good. And if you're not averse to audiobooks, I honestly think that this is probably the best way to take this story in, just because of how well the audiobook was put together. One of the other things that I noticed about this book, and this is by no means a criticism, it's just something that I picked up on, and I think I probably picked up on it more so because I was listening to the audiobook, but the author doesn't, or the narrator, or the main character, Ryland Grace, doesn't swear. Whenever something happens, it's a gosh darn or an oh shoot. And it was just so funny to hear the narrator say those things. And, you know, when I hear stuff like that, it does kind of sound corny sometimes, because a lot of times the books that I am reading, they're not holding anything back. So it was a little jarring for me to hear that type of language versus the profane language that I'm used to hearing in a lot of the books that I'm reading. But like I said, that's not a criticism. That was just something that I noticed. And I would think that there could be some people out there that might be turned off by that, thinking that it might be a little cheesy or corny. But I thought that it added a little bit to the charm of the book, if I'm honest. And the only reason why I pointed it out was because it was so different listening to that versus a lot of the language in the books that I traditionally would read. So just know that, and that's actually a really good thing. I would think it's going to translate into a more wholesome movie, and it'll be family fun for all. So yeah, I did, like I said, I really enjoyed my time with this, and it's making me really excited about the adaptation. I am super curious how they're going to pull off a lot of the things that they did within the book, or the things that they described within the book. I have no idea how all of that is going to play out. There is a specific character in the book, and if you've read this, you know which one I'm talking about. I'm really curious about how that character is going to be portrayed, and yeah, it's something to look forward to. I think the movie's coming out in January of 2026. I could be wrong, but that is also something for me to look forward to next year. And yeah, I do recommend the book, and I think that if you're not a huge fan of science fiction, don't let that put you off of this book. Like I said, everything is explained in great detail. I think this was a really good book for what it is doing, and I think that it's a good option for a universal reading audience. The next book that I finished was called The Anomaly by Hervé Le Tellier. This was translated from the French by Adriana Hunter. And this was a book that I talked about previously on my last recap. I had just started it, and this book is, I hate to put this book in a specific genre. It has elements of science fiction, it's a little mystery, it's a little thriller. There is a lot going on in this book. So basically the premise of this story is you have a plane full of people. They are traveling from Paris to New York. Once they get close to Nova Scotia, there is this weather event that happens, and the plane starts to experience this great, massive level of turbulence. Once the turbulence is happening, toward the end of it, there is this great bright light that shines within the plane, and all of a sudden it disappears, and then the turbulence is over, the plane comes out on the other side of the weather, and everything within the plane seems to be perfectly normal. However, once the communication with the plane starts to happen with air traffic control gets very concerned because this specific plane has previously landed 3 months prior to then. So now we have air traffic control getting the government involved. Now everybody is concerned because we have this weird, crazy thing that's happening. So they divert the plane and everybody on it to this Air Force base in New Jersey while they try to sort out what happened. And then what ends up coming to light is that now we have 2 sets of the exact same people, and it's not a twin situation. It is literally, they are the same people encompassing the same thoughts and the same memories, and then the story takes over from there. So this was a book that grabbed my attention right away, and it was quite the page turner. I literally read this book, or started reading this book, while I was on a plane, so I think that that was an added element of my excitement with this book. But what I will say is that once maybe I got through about 100 pages, maybe 150, the pacing of it did slow down a little bit for me, and I wasn't enjoying it as much. Now, I still think that this was a good book and it was a worthwhile read, but it just wasn't able to keep up that level of excitement for me. And I think that that's to be expected. I honestly don't think that there are many books out there that can maintain that level of engagement and excitement for the reader. So I was expecting it to fall a little, but it just continually fell. And even when we got toward the end of the book, I still felt like I was enjoying the story, but I just did kind of feel like we were constantly on that free fall. And when we got to the end, I was really, really hoping for another twist or another thing to really spark my interest up again, and it never really happened. It just kind of fizzled out. So I would say that I would recommend this book. I really did have a good time with it, and I got a lot out of it. It made me think a lot. It was a book I actually did have to think about, because there were so many stories and so many characters, and there were so many little Easter eggs and puzzle pieces that you had to kind of keep straight. So it was a book that kept me engaged in that way, because I had to think about it. But like I said, it just didn't pan out the way that I wanted it to, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't a good book. I just wish that it would have had a little more of a rise again in the action toward the end, and for me it didn't have that. But I will say this was not a wasted reading experience for me. I did enjoy my time with it, and I am glad that I read it. And the last book that I finished is one that I have had on my bookshelf for a while. I was not planning on reading this book yesterday, but I was clearing some books off of one of my bookcases, and this tiny little book fell off when I pulled another book off the shelf, and I picked it up and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna sit down and read this today. And I'm so glad I did, because I loved this book so much, and that is White Nights by Dostoyevsky, and this is translated from the Russian by Ronald Meyer. So before I get into the book, I just want to take a second to talk about these editions. So these are the Penguin Little Black Classics, and I absolutely love these editions. They are not readily available in the States. As a matter of fact, I've only ever seen them here in used bookstores. I just so happened to pick up a few of them on a trip that I took to the UK several years ago, but anytime I find any of these editions out in the wild in the States, I always try to grab them because I love them so much. They are cheap little books, but they are not cheap quality. I think that for the price of them, they are very well done. And what I love about them is that they are by big name authors, like very popular authors that you would recognize, but they're lesser known stories by them. So sometimes they're novellas, sometimes they're a couple short stories put together, but every time I have read one of these, I have always been so impressed, and this was no exception. So this book contains two stories. The first one is more of a novella. The second one is a true short story called Bobak, and that story has more of a comical tone to it. It takes place in a graveyard where there is a man that stumbles into this graveyard, and he starts hearing voices, and what he learns is that the voices that he is hearing are of the ghosts of the recently deceased, and these ghosts don't know each other, so they're having conversations with each other or amongst each other, learning about their lives and who they were. And it's just a funny, it was a funny little story, and it's perfect for this time of year, it being close to Halloween, and I actually really enjoyed it. I thought that it was a good time. The real star of this book, though, was the story White Nights. It's from the perspective of our unnamed narrator. He is a shy, introverted man. He leads a very lonely life. He's poor. He just doesn't have a lot, you know, going for him, and it pains him. And at the beginning of the story, he's coming out of a dark depression, and we catch him on a good day. He's starting to notice the beauty of the world, and he's starting to see a lot of hope and joy that wasn't there previously, and he's having a pretty good day. And he stumbles upon a woman. He sees her on a bridge, and while he's kind of having that internal debate as to whether or not he'll approach her, he sees that she's being approached by another man, and she seems concerned about it, so he steps in to save her, and they strike up a conversation, and they feel like they've known each other for years. The conversation is flowing, and he is of course smitten, and she considers him a friend, and he's never had a friend before, so he is just over the moon about it. And that's really all I will give about the story, because what unfolds is something that I think you should experience as a reader. But yeah, this story absolutely ripped my heart out, and I think part of why it impacted me so much was that the only other thing I've read by Dostoyevsky was Crime and Punishment, and the way that he was able to capture the humanity of the darkness that can lie in the hearts of people just absolutely blew me away. He was looking at humanity from that that evil perspective and all of the things, the terrible things that we're capable of. But then he taps into this other side of humanity with the sadness and the loneliness and the longing and the regret, and the way that he is just able to capture all of those different facets of what it's like to be human was just overwhelming. And I will be the first to admit I got choked up over this story. And I think what really hit me about it was that in order for somebody to be able to write the story that he did with White Nights about being lonely, you know that came from his heart. You know that came from the feelings that he was truly having about his own life. And I think that that's incredibly sad, and it got to me. And I am so glad that I read this story. I thought it was beautiful. And I thought that anybody who has ever experienced that type of loneliness, or that, you know, looking for something, or trying to find somebody in your life to share it with, and not being able to do so. I think that if you are a person that has ever gone through that, you're going to relate to this character and the feelings that he was having. And yeah, it was a short read, but it was definitely worth my time, and I absolutely loved it. And now I'm on the hunt for more of these little Black classics from Penguin, because I need more stories like this in my life. So that's it. Those are the books that I have finished. As far as what I'm currently reading, I am still plowing my way through the Booker long list. I did finish The Loneliness of Sonia and Sunny, but I'm not going to talk about that on this video. I will do a standalone video for that one, but I did finish it, so it should be coming soon. And then I decided to focus on One Boat by Jonathan Buckley. I am about 50 pages into this one. It's a short book, so it shouldn't take me too long. And then that only leaves Sea Scraper and The Land in Winter. I'm looking very forward to both of those. And then I am still reading The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. And I also picked up, kind of on a whim, I wasn't going to participate in this book club. So I belong to Eric Carl Anderson's book club, and they are reading Tess of the D'Urbervilles for this month, but I decided I wasn't going to read it, and then guess what? I started reading it. So I am reading this. I am actually enjoying it. I do love a miserable book, and this is miserable in the best way possible. So yeah, I'm glad I decided to partake in this one. So maybe by the next recap that I do, I will be done with that one. And then I think that that's it as far as current reads. I could be missing one, but if I am, I just can't think of it right now. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is books that I might be picking up in the future. So I did a video, I think just over a week ago, where I was talking about some big books on my TBR, and I cannot believe the response that I got from that video. I had so many comments talking about which books I should read, and thank you to everybody that watched that video and posted a comment. I went through and tried to make a list of the votes that all of the different books got, and I think that I did make a decision on what books I am going to start with. So first thing is, I think that I am going to do my project read of 2026 for The Count of Monte Cristo. There were several people that talked about how wonderful this book is, so even though I had heard that one bad review in the past that that turned me off of it. So many other people swooped in and said what a great story it is. So I think this will be my project read. And then the other two that had the most votes, I think I'm going to try to read both of those by the end of the year, or at least get them both started by the end of the year. I feel like one of them is going to be a quicker read than the other, so I'm likely going to start with Lonesome Dove. It was a book that so many people had said that they enjoyed, so I put it at the top of the list, and then there was one commenter who had said that I should read it because I have had such fond memories of this book because of my father, and I should read it in tribute to him. So I definitely took that to heart, so I'm gonna read this one. And then the other one will be David Copperfield will be the one that I probably start very shortly after this one. So maybe I can get both of those done by the end of the year. So there you have it. I think that's everything that's currently going on in my reading life. Although by the time I do my next recap, the plan could change. You all know I'm a mood reader, but this is what I have for now, and hopefully I can stick to it. Thank you again for taking the time out of your day to watch my video, and for all of the likes and comments that I have had on these last few videos. I really do appreciate all of you. Thank you again, and there will be more recaps to come, and until we read again, bye!